Well, sir, should we talk about a movie that had absolutely no restraint in holding punches?
And I'm the one that's always accused of playing the things that may be in poor taste in certain arenas, but I'm glad you took over the reins this one time.
Well, there's only really one tough scene in this one, but to be fair, it wasn't a minor, so that's always a plus. Uh, and then two, it is definitely needed, only in the sense that you need something of that caliber to happen to be okay with what Mr. Norris ends up doing. Anything below that, you're just like, well, he's clearly he's the one with the issue.
I was trying to keep a running count before that too of is he committing an actual crime or is it true self-defense? But I think it takes place in California, so the answer is both. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, but by the time we got to the end of it, I was like, oh no, I could probably justify all of these. I don't think it would. I don't think it would count as premeditated at this point, especially there at the end when he helped the dude hang 10.
Yeah. He tried, damn it. He tried. Um and thankfully just nobody, the only thing that would trip him up is the gas can scene, but literally nobody saw it. The movie even goes so far as to say that. Um so it's fine. It's totally fine.
which which I like the way that they did that ending because that was the whole excuse for why he couldn't get the kids out of the school in the
It
first
was
place. So I think it
brilliant.
just
It was brilliant. Um,
oh,
so class of 1984. This is your classic, good-minded, honest, white bread fucking teacher is gonna go to the rough school, and well, I. It's not that he already knows and he thinks he's already going to go in there and make a difference. He doesn't know how bad it is. He's just like, oh, I get to be a teacher today. I've never been a teacher. It's his first day ever teaching. And he just got the unluckiest pick of the draw and had to go to what was it called? Lincoln High?
yeah. I just automatically went PS 118 in my head, but I was like, no, that's Halo Island. You need to
Move
back off of
it,
that one.
football head. Um, but we were discussing this before the show. I really feel that anytime that a movie needed a bad high school, that they just used this building. Like I know we already said that we were going to watch Dangerous Minds next week, but so we don't have to. It's not like a surprise or anything. But I almost feel like it might be the same school. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I'm just thinking of like the floor like patterns and shit, and I'm like, I think that might be the same school.
I'm gonna have to double check because I feel like was this the was this the same school that was supposed to be used for Scream that they told them they couldn't because of the content? Because if it is, this might be the best thing ever. I will have to look that up and get back
Yep.
to you all.
I vaguely remember hearing about that story. I know it's not the one that ended up in the movie, but I vaguely think I've heard rumblings of this story about a prior location being attempted to be used first.
Which is why in the credits it says, and absolutely no thanks to the Santa Clara school system or something like that.
Oh, nice. That's right.
It's a big Wes Craven middle finger, and I love it.
um, so we've got our main do good teacher, Mr. Norris, played by Perry King. Now, this dude, this dude, he, he had the look then, and if you could have taken how he looked then and just time warp him to now, he would still have the look. Like I just kept thinking, this is the guy that this is the MacGruber guy. I mean, it's not, but he looks exactly like the MacGruber guy. I'm just like, Jesus.
gotta look at this now.
But apparently he was the president in The Day After Tomorrow.
Ah,
There we go.
alright.
I don't think oh, he was in the Hatfields and McCoys. He was a McCoy.
Damn it.
I think I'm related to one of those families. I just don't know which one. But I think my wife looked that up.
My
Hopefully
feelings towards him in the movie, by the way, when you said, I thought you were going to say white meat babyface because that makes me think of Stone Cold Steve Austin and his podcast. But if you think about it, he kind of has the Stone Cold Steve Austin arc. He starts out as one of the Hollywood blondes and then ends up Austin 316 and on all of these not so good school children. There we go.
Apparently, I don't know in what capacity. Okay, it says TV series, but I don't know if they just put pictures up. The title is confusing, but it says Star Wars Return of the Jedi, the original radio drama. So I don't know if this was like a radio reading of the movie that they put on TV or if there's actual stuff, but he was credited only for voice work, but he was the voice for Han Solo in it.
Holy crap, he was. A radio drama
That's a little interesting. The Hitch.
Huh.
Oh, that's the okay, not the movie. Okay.
And, there's an odd connection to that.
Hmm.
Perry King auditioned for the role of Han Solo in the original Star Wars.
You know what? That's fucking awesome. I could see that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think history chose the right person that it needed to choose. But a Perry King Han Solo, I wouldn't snuff at that either. I would not snuff at that. But he goes there. Now, we've got an interesting cast of heathens, of ne'er-do-wells, some troublemakers, some rapscallions,
that's
scoundrels.
Rapscallion might be a bit harsh, my friend.
But colorful names too. Colorful names. But let's see here. The main leader of the pack though was Stegman. And you want to talk about somebody you love to hate, except for one thing where he goes a little too far. But you love to hate him because you're just like, he knows what he can and can't get away with, and he exploits every bit of it.
He does, and he has such a punchable face too.
He does. Then we've got the drug dealer of the bunch, their drug man. Character is called Drugstore. This kid is good. Like I like this character. He creeps me out, but in the right way that the character should.
I'm trying to get my picture of him up here. Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, I really liked his shirt, the one that had all the anatomy drawn on it with the bones and all that stuff. I liked that. That was cool. Then there was their other cohort who was definitely not a 40-year-old man posing as a high school bully named Barnyard. This dude looks like he showed up for on set after just finishing up his bus route.
I think he was only 25 when he did this too, which is just mind blowing.
He must have smoked 5 packs a day, and it aged him horribly. Then
he's a lot more likable character in My Bloody Valentine. I'll put it to you that way. But I wanted to. Where did he get all the Nazi shirts from?
I want to know that. There were so many Nazi shirts. It's one thing if you see one Nazi shirt, and then you're just like, whatever. And especially if it was homemade. None of these were homemade. These were all professionally made swastika shirts, and it's just like there was like 2 or 3 of them. And I'm like, I don't think those are just laying around a Goodwill.
No, they're not. The Be a Man Among Men shirt, the Rhodesian Army recruiting poster, those shirts, you can, I mean, hell, I think you can still find those. But, like, the Nazi shirts were the ones that bothered me because I was like, what shop is actively selling them? I'm uncomfortable that that is okay, especially again, in California, of all places.
Well, now here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I'm thinking. Nowadays, yeah. But I imagine that there must have been a ton of mom and pop prop shops in LA. And they'll take anything. Not a professionally run, company, just a mom and pop prop shop. Back in those days, I bet you found a ton of fucking Nazi shit.
In hindsight, too, it's probably the same shop that the biker gang from the Bronx Warriors shopped at. So okay, I'll give it a pass.
But I'm hoping that they got all 3 shirts for like less than $20. That's my hope.
I thought out of principle they should have stolen them.
Yeah. Stuff them in like all the teacher, like school supplies shit that they need. Bring that up. Now the girl, because they had a girl member. What the fuck was her name?
Patsy, if I recall.
Patsy,
correctly.
yeah, okay, yeah, okay. That's who yeah, that's her. What a raunchy fucking, like, yeah, and I think the reason that this girl bothers me so much is that I know somebody kind of like that, and she looked exactly how this character, like how she dressed in the movie, is how this person dressed and looked in real life that I knew. Like, thankfully, I was never a victim of anything. Like, she hung. I've mentioned. I can't remember if I've mentioned this before on the show. I know I might have mentioned this story before on one of my older streams, but there was this house in town where it was like this crazy pilled out woman. Like, she was just all barred out, and any kid in the neighborhood that ran away could just go stay there, and she'd be like, "Hey, you can stay here as long as you just fucking had a way of like feeding her a pill every so often, and there was a spot on the floor open, you could stay there." Mind you, the whole floor was covered in cat and dog shit because they're all barred out. They're not really cleaning shit up. No pun intended. But anyway, she stayed there, and this bitch was so loopy and crazy. She stole or found, I'm not gonna say she stole them, but she found a bunch of like empty cardboard boxes, refrigerator boxes and stuff, and constructed a giant cardboard house. And she drew windows and grass and doors on it, like with crayons and shit on it. And that was her house that she lived in. And she was like, "You want to come to my house?" Oh, shit. Yeah. But this chick totally just reminded me of this character in this movie.
Fuck.
She was pleasant enough though. Like, she didn't go out of her way to be evil, but it's just spot on, like twin sister.
I was just gonna comment and say, "Oh, she's in one of my favorite slashers. Happy birthday to me!" But no, you took that to a whole new level. And also, when we were talking about Black Phone earlier, you were talking about kind of how the effect of him not being able to hear the phone. You have a little bit closer connection to this movie because you can relate that character to a real life character. That adds a whole new element to this movie. Jeez.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if I want to say that this guy's the best part of the movie, but I kind of want to say that he's the best part. He's the most entertaining factor of the movie. And we got to hang out with him for a little bit on our summer road trip. uh Mr. Roddy McDowell as
Mm-hmm.
the already mentally broken teacher that has been working there that's befriended Mr. Norris. Um this dude is just great. Now, when I put this on Wednesday, I had my buddy who only gets the 1 day off a week over here, so he got to watch it with us while we were all watching it.
Yeah.
And he'd never seen it before, and I'm like, I love this movie. It's fucking great. That was his favorite character. Just watching him like always shaking with the bottle, like, or the glass, getting fucking drunk, even when they're out at the picnic.
Yeah.
And he um and the poor motherfucker with the rabbits and shit, like
Oh
what they
God.
did to him. That was the moment, because like there's just like some things here and there, and my friend's like, all right, this is interesting, all right, but when it got to the point where they skinned and butchered and cooked the man, because the dude was a scientist, so he had all these like animals and shit in his class, so they broke in to fuck with him and tortured and cooked all the bunnies and shit.
And the
um
cat.
yeah, so when that scene happened, my friend was just like, okay, shit's fucking on now.
That is that scene too. If it hadn't already happened, that's the as we like to talk about, that's the irredeemable scene. That's the one that they can't come back from.
Well, on that end, yeah.
No.
Um, but let me ask you this, because I want to get into some of the other characters, the innocence characters, if you will. But before I do that, how do you feel about them making Mr. Norris the band teacher? Like, I'm fine with it, but for some reason I feel like he should have been the gym teacher, because who the fuck is the gym teacher, and why is he just like cool with all this shit happening?
Because if they made him the gym teacher, he would have shot him about halfway through the movie.
But in Coach Buzzcut.
The oh the making him the band teacher, I think one, he looks like my old middle school band teacher, which is kind of off-putting. Um, but I think putting him on the art side of things instead of something more physical, even though band is kind of physical at times, uh, I think it gave him a little bit more of a well, I just want to help him, and that makes the breaking point so much worse because the gym teacher's already like, nah, fuck that. Y'all hit the hill or you get the fuck out of my gym.
Yeah.
Uh, kind of thing. Like I said, it wouldn't have lasted long. Like you said, put Coach in there, and then this movie's like an hour shorter, and there's a lot more fatalities, a lot faster.
Yeah.
Um,
I plus it also, one of the other aspects which I really they okay, they used it the appropriate amount. Like, I felt like maybe you could have done a little something more with it, but uh I liked that they showed Stegman kind of being like the idiot savant with the
mm-hmm.
piano. Where like he actually is like smart. Like, he's playing the piano perfectly. Like, everything's great. It's like, did I get the fucking gig? He's like, I just want to learn, but he
and
won't let me.
and funny enough, in his scene, he actually played the piano.
Mm.
So he actually did his. He has a credit in the credits. Oddly enough, that it was. I think it was called Stegman's movement or something like that, and it is credited to Terry Van Patten.
Nice. Um, I think if you're gonna go that route, which you kind of need, because I like that he's not just some punk kid. I like that you see that he is intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you can't really. Well, I mean, you could do that if Norris was a gym teacher. Like, you could have him be like a really good basketball player or something. But I don't think it works quite as effective as band teacher.
Plus, the counterpoint to him and Stegman too is he is the idiot savant, but he's also affluent because you get to see the swanky freaking place that he lives in with his mom, and it's very clear that he's putting on some kind of act towards towards everything. That he doesn't have to be a drug dealer because, well, he had a nice Plymouth, I will say, but no more.
Yeah. Um,
Because our awesome gym teacher, or I'm sorry, he becomes our gym teacher in terms of attitude.
I think that that small scene at his house with his mom, like, other than just being a fun counterpoint where Norris kind of gets to score a small point against Stegman,
Mhm.
um, because he's for the majority of the movie he's having to play defense against him. This is one of the few moments, other than the over the edge moment, where he fucking wins the game. Um, but it's one of the rare moments where he gets to fucking score a tally, if you will. But so what do we figure out? We find out that clearly his mom is a dope
Mhm.
and is very, I don't want to say naive. Like, I think she very well knows exactly what's going on. She just chooses to ignore it. But the whole thing about where, like, even when the doorbell rang and she's like, go get the door. And he's just like looking at her like, what? And she ends up going to get the door. We know that his dad is dead because, like, she's like, if only his dad was alive. She says that to Mr. Norris. So it's like, clearly his dad must have been exactly like this, an evil piece of shit and he learned all of that. And now that he's gone, he's just like, all right, well, this is how you get stuff out of mom. Like, it's very telling. I almost want to know, like, what his dad did, like what his dad did for a living.
That was really subtle too, and it does kind of start unlocking a lot of doors that you're like, oh, this is the kind of guy we're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
I I would watch that prequel.
Mm-hmm.
Give us the
Oh,
knowledge. You get to see what happened to the old band teacher.
what if he's, what if secretly, in headcanon lore, he's like the son of the crazy dude from Wall Street? Because clearly the dad was the one that made all the money. Now he's dead because it wasn't the dope mom that made all the money. Because if she made all the money, she wouldn't put up with the shit the kid's giving her.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
That kid would have a serious Class A ass whooping.
Yeah, you wouldn't. You don't say that to Murphy Brown.
Okay.
I'm just saying that scene is a deep psychological dive there if you allow it. um but anyway, so like I said, Mr. Norris is the band teacher. Now, uh we've got our innocents, if you will, our lovable characters. Mr. Michael J. Fox, before he was Michael J. Fox, when he was just Michael Fox. Um This is before Back to the Future, and he's like, maybe I'll throw that J in there for some flair.
It becomes John Mellencamp. He has to change his name every 3 years.
um, and you know what? He's pretty good in this. He's so baby face. He's still got his chubby little baby cheeks in this. Um, but what was it? He had his one joke where what was it? He called his instrument by the wrong name on purpose, and they're like, if they got you thinking that, then we got a lot of more problems on our hands. It's like,
Oh,
you know,
oh, oh.
it almost, you know what? I felt bad for him getting shanked at one point, but that joke, you deserved it.
It wasn't a, it didn't kill him. So, it was just a reminder. You got to watch your dad jokes.
Yeah. Um, and then there was the main girl. I forget what her fucking name was. The one that ended up like being able to like conduct the class. Diane? No, that was his wife. Fallon.
Looking at her IMDb here, that was the movie that they were watching, that he was watching on the TV.
No. Oh,
Was the Lone
Deneen.
Hunter.
Deneen, I think her name is. Yeah, this Erin Noble. Yeah, I think this is her.
Yeah, that's her.
Let me see. Oh, she's in Modern Family.
No
Good.
shit.
She still does shit. The Hardy Boys. The Hardy Boys.
I was just thinking.
Raging Clue. Um, Invited. Good. Blind. Okay, she was in Blinds. Oh, okay, never mind. I was thinking of The Blind Side with Sandra Bullock. Um, all right, yeah, so good. I'm glad that she still does shit. But she was a nice. This movie doesn't really have like a well, I wouldn't even say it's a slasher. This is, I guess you would say this is a revenge. Is it a revenge?
Yeah, it kind of is.
Because like I kind of lean. It's not a slasher.
No.
Because I was gonna say I'm like if anybody was kind of like the final girl, it would be her. But I'm like there really isn't a final girl in this movie. I mean, it would be either her or Mrs. Norris, but you know, usually stuff like that doesn't happen to the final girl.
It only happens to the final girl in a rape revenge movie. Because I Spit on Your Grave, House on the Edge of the Park, the Night Train Murders, Last House on the Left. They're all kind of bound by that. But the revenge part of it kind of starts before the act happens. So it's a gangs movie with a revenge kicker.
The other person I forgot to mention that was a part of the gang, even though like I wouldn't he's only really honestly, in my opinion, got one memorable scene, and that's when he dies.
When he
But
gets his arm cut off.
yeah. But I do remember when my buddy was watching it with me, and he's just like, man, he really likes that chain. Because he's one of those 80s punks that just wields the large clump of chain. And
Yeah.
I was like, I'm like, that's how they did it back then. And I'm like, have you never like held like a big chain like that and just like give it a good thrashing like that? And he's like, no. And I'm like, it's very releasing. It's nice. like I kind of want that to come back because like you only ever saw that shit in like you only saw that shit in 80s movies, beat 'em up video games, and Road Rash. All right.
Yeah, literally just those.
Yeah. So it's just like I'm like we need to bring back we need whips and chains. Maybe some leather. I don't know.
50 Shades of Last Call.
Yeah.
That's funny though, because I was sitting here, I was like, we watched Friday the 13th Part 3 last week, and guy wielding chain. I can't think of other uses for it. Although I will say, with your thing about wielding it though, just be careful, because if you hit yourself with it, that bitch hurts.
You fucked.
Yeah.
That it never really did seem like a good practical weapon to use against a person, but I love watching people use it to destroy cars. Like,
oh yeah,
it just fucks up a car.
I forgot about one where it's not used by typical street gangs. Lucio Fulci's The Beyond. When they crucify the dude in the basement at the beginning, they smack him with the chain a few times too, and it shows it, and it looks painful.
That's right, I forgot. I saw somebody posted something about that movie today too, and I was like, Beyond.
It's playing on 35 millimeter in Los Angeles this evening.
You know, I never wanted to live there even before the homeless situation, but why does all the good shit just happen there?
I feel like with some of those, like if you contact Grindhouse Releasing and see if they can get something in your area, they will, because they just, I mean, that kind of shit prints money. And also, watching it in true 35 millimeter and not a digital projection like you normally would get at a theater, that's a whole different experience. Mm.
Um, now, before we get into Mr. Norris's mental fucking breakdown, well, shit, before we even get into Roddy McDowell's breakdown, um, probably I'm not gonna count any of the shit that Mr. Norris does to the students, even though that's pretty much the whole movie. Uh, I would say though, aside from all of that, the most iconic death in the movie is the flagpole.
Hmm.
Um, you feel bad for that kid. It so essentially what happens is that Michael Fox wasn't Jay at this point. Michael Fox and his friend were buying. Well, his friend was buying some drugs off of a drugstore and the cohorts, if you will. Um, I don't know what the fuck it was because at one point, they are talking a lot about coke, which we'll get into that scene in a second because I want to talk about the coke whore. Um,
Uh, and knife fighting. We have to talk about knife fighting.
um, but what it's been double digit years since I've dabbled, and I don't plan to ever dabble again. But trust me, I'm a man who's done his fair share of cocaine. I've done my share. I've done your share. I've done anybody in the audience. I've done a lot of cocaine in my days. um, Anytime that drug is depicted in movies, there's always that moment where they kind of like get that coke high and they're goofy. Like, oh. I don't know what that comes from. I've mentioned this before as a complaint. Just clearly a scene made by people who've never actually done the drug they're trying to film. Um, but whatever that dude did, that was not cocaine. I'm gonna say PCP. That seems more accurate to what actually happened to that guy. Except he wouldn't have been on. I mean, he still would have ended up on the flagpole, but he wouldn't have been happy about it. He would have been up there thinking that ninjas were trying to kill him, not like, hey, everybody.
Yeah, because even that kind of goes against what you know from the horror stories and Dare. Thank you, Dare.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, damn. Yeah, that does. I was trying to think because I think the only movie you said that they didn't necessarily get it right, but it was just so weird that it made sense was Effects. When
Mhm.
when they're about to watch the snuff film, they partake. But in this, yeah, that I was wondering too because I was like, it seemed like whatever he was on had hallucinogenic or delirium actually more delirium qualities because of kind of how he was acting. And before anyone asks, no, I took some courses in school about it, but they had a little bit more of a delirium quality to it, and I was like, why is he so happy about this situation? Because I don't like heights, and that would have.
And to be fair, okay, look, I'm trying to feel bad for that character, but look, clearly that man's never done drugs before in his life, and he was ready. He was willing to experiment, and I don't fault an individual for wanting to experiment. But if you've never done anything, A, why are you going to start with something like that? B, why are you going to do that amount for your first time? And C, why would you do it at school?
You're checking off a lot of red flag boxes.
So him climbing up the flagpole and then falling off and dying, like that's the same. It equates to the situation in SLC Punk where Devon Sawa ran through the football field with sprinklers on and all that acid soaked into him, and then he just was burnt out the rest of his life. His mom turned into a bull and was trying to kill him.
I forgot about that.
No, the main thing I remember is if you don't follow Devin Sawa on Twitter, you need to do that shit because he is fucking hilarious. Um It was like a while ago. He posted a picture of himself from that movie, and he's wearing the jean jacket with the words "fuck you" written on it really big. And he was like, one of these days my kids are gonna ask me about this.
I I have the urge to go back and rewatch that movie now.
It's a good movie. It's a good movie. Um, but anyway, so yeah, he climbs up the flagpole all fucked up and then just falls off because he's busy fucking with the flag. Um, Roddy McDowell, the man always who was already broken from the beginning of the movie. Well, he is pretty much broken. He just needed that extra little push. Um, does everything he can to help Norris fucking he's like, look, this shit's fucked up. Don't try. It's not worth it. Just get your paycheck and get the fuck out. Um I like that he's got the handgun in his briefcase and he's just always drinking. But uh even when he got the when Norris and him encounter Stegman and the gang in the street outside of school and fucking he gets his hand cut, even he was just like, he's like, no, no, don't take me to the hospital. I'm fine. Yeah, he's like, it's like, it was our fault. Dude is just dialed into just fucked up.
That was like the most, I'm going to retire in a couple of weeks statement ever. Like, just get me to retirement date before these kids kill me, and I'm good.
The only scene that they really needed to have between those two is just that the Roddy McDowell needed to sit fucking Norris down and just be like, let me explain to you what tenure is. I'm trying to make that shit. Then I don't even have to show up.
You get to become a wizard. You are neither late nor on time.
He's like, my wife's been making a dummy out of hay that I'm just gonna put in the chair. Just wait. But so that happens, and then of course I think it was out of the retaliation of that is when Stegman and gang fucking go in and fuck up with the animals in the class.
Mm.
And that kind of just the combination of all that just kind of added up, and that was the final straw. That, and I love it's annoying if you're Mr. Norris, but in terms of storytelling and the movie, the way that the principal acts, where he's just you hate everything that the principal is saying, but he's not wrong legally.
He is the type of principal that will go allegedly anytime something happens. That's something interesting about this that I wouldn't expect from something that would be considered a exploitation movie or something like that. That they actually presented the upper management dilemma, I will call it that, in such a in a realistic kind of way, because they are kind of bound by the fact that all of the people that are involved in this are under 18. They're under the legal age, so anything that they do, they have to be damn sure on. But you would think, with all of the stuff that's going on, that school is on lockdown like 24/7, but yet a prison-style shanking happens with all of the cameras around. Drug deals happen in broad daylight and not even hidden. I mean, it's just kind of ridiculous that the principal's like, well, I could bend the rules just a little bit here. But no, damn it. We are a law and order school, except for all of the non-law and order shit going on around us.
Even though they didn't say it specifically or have a scene in the movie that showed it, the way that the principal was acting, because you have to assume that the reason that we get shown, okay, we're not going to see a multitude of teachers in this movie just because A, you don't need to, and B, that fucks with the budget because now you got more actors you got to pay. I believe that you are led to assume in different varying degrees, Roddy McDowell's level of fuck it is the mentality of every faculty member. Like that's just kind of like what it's supposed to be. Now, the principal, he has the same mentality. He's just like, as long as we survive, that's all that fucking matters. But the way that he's acting and the things that he says, like he even says, I don't even remember if it was him or the sheriff or detective or whatever, who was just like, he practically has to hold your hand while committing the crime. And the principal is acting like somebody who maybe at once he tried, but he ran through that legal system once or twice, and they're like, "Nah, bro, you need." And he was just like, oh, "All right, well, fuck it."
I retire next year too.
Yeah, tenure. um, but it all culminates though with Roddy McDowell fucking snapping and holding the class hostage at gunpoint. And that's fucking awesome. Like my friend was laughing, but yet so interested. Like he was just glued to the screen. um, I think it's the small details, but anytime with the exception of Stegman at the end, but there's a reason for why it goes different with him than anybody else, which we'll get into. But basically, so he's got the classic gunpoint. They're all in their desks. He's fucking flipped his shit. He goes to drugstore and asks him a question. He gets it right. Then he goes to Patsy, asks her a question. She gets it right. I think it's an interesting choice that they get him right. Because like I said, you have the moment with Stegman and the piano. Like clearly these kids aren't just dumb pumpkins. They don't go out of their way to billboard the information to you, but it's like all these things you can put together, like the thing I came up with Stegman's dad, just that idea, all off the little bits of fruit that they have in that scene. Like I said, Stegman playing the piano, everybody getting the questions right. Stegman was going to get the question wrong, or was he? Did he know the answer? He was just maybe too scared to answer.
Or he had to keep up the appearance. Because in that scene, it kind of made me wonder: did all of the characters know that the lifestyle that they're living wasn't going to last? So they maybe were pocketing things in the old knowledge bank, like, you know, drugstore. He might go on to be one of the best biologists or chemologists, whatever they are, ever. Especially Kim's, because he's quite familiar with them. Patsy, you know, she might go on to be a doctor. Barnyard might go on to get killed in prison. We really don't know. But they all kind of had a certain presence about them. And I think Stegman's he knew that he was going to be fine because, again, we see he's actually affluent in the background the whole time, so he was going to be fine regardless of what happened, and everybody else secretly had to fight for themselves. A little layered, maybe I'm looking into it a little too much, but I kind of got that vibe from it, that they all weren't necessarily on the same level of bullshit that he was.
You know what scene just popped into my head is, what was it? What were their names in Office Space? It's like, I got a meeting with the Bobs.
The Bobs, yeah.
And they're just sitting there with Stegman and they're talking about Stegman. They're like, I got to tell you, he's got upper management written all over. And then Mr. Norris like, I'm going to have to disagree.
He's been real flaky with everything lately.
But yeah, it's fascinating to me, just the small subtle choices that they make, where these aren't dumb kids. Because I mean, like I said, I was joking with everybody where I'm like, all right, they got drug racketing, like the whole meeting when he brings in the co-core, and the other kid, he's like, how old are you? 14? Like he's considering the kid's age. Like the man, like that, like I'm like, we got a real up and comer right here. This is a Tony Montana right here.
Building his criminal empire at the high school. I mean, that is just, it's something.
It's something. It really is. And he pretty much had that school wrapped around the brilliance of beating himself up in the bathroom to make it look like Norris did
it. Even though he had no defensive wounds on him whatsoever, and that shit probably would have raised an eyebrow, the detectives weren't going to get that close to him because of the situation. And that is so brilliant that they went ahead and said, hey, we know you're probably going to think this, but you need to think of the situation too. I am still shocked at how well written and how well it kind of flows the story out.
Now, so the one factor that we're kind of gleaning over, which was one of the more fun parts of the movie, is when Roddy McDowall. So Roddy McDowall, what did we say? Discharges a weapon on school grounds.
Carrying on school. Actually, no. This was prior to the 1990 bill where you couldn't carry on grounds.
Mm-hmm. But discharges a weapon on school grounds, holds students hostage, attempted murder of a student. I mean, shit, I was joking with the reckless endangerment when he was in the car, but you could apply that to the school thing too.
Well, DUI in the car.
Yeah, dude. Big DUI. But I like that all that happens, and they're just like, nah, you can just let him go. because it's like it's they let him go, and we know that it's daytime, but the next time that we see him is at night in the car, so nothing happened to him.
So my reading on that scene was that they got him out of there because he was going to have to go for a psychiatric evaluation, and they didn't want to make it turn into a whole scene. Thankfully, this was before cell phones, I guess, because everybody would have called, and then, well, everybody would have got out of school that day. I'll put it to you that way.
They did make an emphasis earlier that the principal, like he was already worried about Stegman's mom suing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, him keeping things as quiet as possible, it makes sense. Jesus Christ, they thought of everything with this.
They movie. Really did keep. They knew we were going to do this show in 2022, and they undermined us at every turn.
But that culminates in Roddy McDowall going crazy and trying to run everybody down on the strip with his car, which he flips, and then the car. What's funny is when the car explodes. And I understand. I'm sure that this shows up in a lot of movies, but sometimes they think of it and try not to get it on camera or on film. But you can see when the car explodes, because there's a small explosion, and then you can tell that there's a very, very quick edit and then a bigger explosion, because I think they had to do things in like 2 takes, or it was a multiple take thing. But you can see right before the big explosion that there's like a trail of like liquid or fuel or something, and you see the fire go in the line.
Well, that could have been from where the gas tank split whenever he hit the back of the car.
It was in front of the car, though.
That was just your eyes playing with you, man. They thought everything.
They thought everything.
No, I did kind of see that, because the way for that stunt to play out with the vehicle blowing up from the bottom, because the explosion comes from inside the cab, if you will.
Yeah.
That stuntman ain't in there for that. That stuntman is not getting a concussion blast on top of flame on top of him. That's just not going to happen.
No.
So you can tell that they would have had to do a quick jump cut, light it, and move on. But it's honestly not that. I don't think it's that noticeable. But also,
it's a fun enough explosion that you don't notice the flaws.
I think if you're first time watching it, you're going to be so in shock that it happened that you're not going to notice it. Maybe by like the third watch, you'd be like, what?
So that happens, and Michael Fox gets shanked. Roddy McDowell blowed up.
He just
uh,
exploded.
Principal ain't helping Norris. The cops ain't helping Norris.
But they're
Uh,
trying.
they're trying. He convinced them to diverge a little bit of information, which led to the house visit. And that, like I said, that was the only real check mark that Norris kind of got because he fucked up his car. He fucked up Stegman's car on his way out. That was great. Um, but then we're gonna get to what really kind of because you need to be able to be okay with what Norris is about to do. So we need something major to happen. Um, so he's getting ready for the big performance with the band. He's like, yeah, it's gonna be great. I gotta go set up early. The wife's at home getting ready. Stegman and crew break into the house and force themselves upon Mrs. Norris. And not an easy scene to watch. Most of these scenes often are not. But I there's a sick part of me that just can't help but laugh at the faces that Stegman is making with each thrust. Only because not because of that he should be making those faces, but as an actor, he's like, okay, what should I do in this scene? Like, okay, I know what I have to do. What should my face say? And that's what he went with. And it's kind of funny because it was not the right choice.
It wasn't, but I'm gonna read in too far into this. I think it's fitting for the character because the character is supposed to be this Jesus Christ. It's supposed to be this hard dude who has, you know, he's running a gang, he's, untouchable, if you will. And in that moment he couldn't pull a face off that kept it to where, it looks like he is in control of the situation. It looks like I don't want to say it looks like he's an amateur, but that's kind of, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't look like he is the cool guy anymore. It brings him down from that.
If I could say this in a cool, demeaning way,
Yeah.
instead of being the badass in charge of the situation, he looks like a little boy getting his dick wet for the first time.
That is a much easier way of saying what I was trying to say. Thank you.
Yeah.
But it's fitting though because it demeans his character too, and unfortunately, the wife character has to go through all of that for us to get to the revenge portion of the subgenre that we have now dipped into.
Mm-hmm.
It makes the character look worse.
It does. And it really kind of like helps, like, because there are some parts throughout the movie with the girl Patsy where you're like, are you really down with all of this? But she's there laughing the whole time, taking the pictures. She's going to be the messenger girl here in a little bit. So you're just like, yeah, you're fucking psycho too. I like that they kind of do the whole war paint with her makeup. I thought that was a nice little touch.
Yeah.
But they go out, they do what they got to do. They take a Polaroid of them doing said act to Mrs. Norris. Then they kidnap her. And then they send Patsy just before the performance is about to start. And I don't know why this sticks out to me, but it's always just so funny to me. Clearly this must have been this guy's one and only time acting and that he wasn't prepared for it. And they were like, hey, we need a dude for real quick. Can you do this? And it's the kid that delivers the note to him. He gets the note from Patsy, swiftly, robotically, but swiftly walks down the aisle. That girl right there. It's just the stiff delivery of that girl right there.
I believe that this guy is a high school student with how he delivered it.
That always cry. That and the I I joked about it so much, but I completely forgot to bring it up when we were talking about Heroin Busters. The dubbing when he goes into the restaurant and like he drank out of the guy's water and they're like he's like, hey, don't touch that. I ordered that. That's my water. I love it. I love it.
Oh God.
But anyway, so the Polaroid is delivered to Mr. Norris, uh, and he runs off, understandably so,
Yeah.
and leaving Deneen there to orchestrate said band. This is where the fun shit begins. This is where the they drew first blood comes into play. Um, he chases down Patsy for a while. Now, I believe the first kid that he tumbles with is our chain dude in the
Yep.
shop, right? So they have a little tussle, a little spear action into some desks, and then there's the table saw, of which Mr. Norris at first looked like he was going to get the action of, but we know our movies and that ain't going to happen. So not only did he cut that kid's arm off, he threw him back on top of the saw, like back first, you know? And I remember when that happened because both my friend and wife were like, oh shit. And I just couldn't help resist. And I'm like, that's how Johnny Cash's brother went out too.
You know, if that had been an Arnie movie and Arnie was playing as Mr. Norris, when the police came and they asked what happened to Chain Guy, he would have been like, he had to split.
He had to split. um, so he runs into that, does all that. Next up, he lures in drugstore, and he had poured gas all over the floor and had the welding torch ready to go. Drugstore comes in. They kind of have like a little Mexican standoff, like, where is she? I'll fucking drop it. Of course, he refuses to tell Mr. Norris where the wife is, so he drops the torch on the floor, and the fire goes up, and then we get a full-on Sparrow stunt with Drugstore, which is really cool, and I'm glad that it happened. But it's one of those situations like with Prometheus, and I'm like, dude, just step to the left. You, like, don't stand in the puddle of gas. You see the fire coming.
I think he was maybe he was all right. I'll try to justify it. I'll try. Maybe he was afraid of moving because he was still carrying some of the gas with him, and if he dropped it, gas ignites really fast, and he had a blowtorch there. It would have caught him, and I think he already probably had the bottom of his pants soaked, so that would have went up pretty quick.
True.
So, but he was holding a knife, wasn't he?
I think Chain Guy was holding a knife because I'm getting the knife throw with confused with the rooftop fight with Stegman before Window. Because there was a knife that hits the ground there. Did Drugstore have a knife? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he did, because when him and Patsy and Barnyard found Chain Guy, they got pissed off and he had the knife and he was like, oh, I'm gonna fucking
Ah, yes.
So he did have a knife, but he got barbecued, and then Patsy and Barnyard come in, and Barnyard comes. I love the blocks, man. Like I said, every time I see it, L1, R1, L1, R1.
He was blocking with his forearms and getting hit with a lead pipe.
Yeah. That's another. I'm telling you, like, this guy was like. The guy was always used for various reasons in the show, but you did bring up Ren and Stimpy earlier. You remember that every so often there would be a Kowalski and it'd be this big, burly, hairy fucking. That's Barnyard.
That's fair. That checks.
But you know, for a weird character, I like the villains in this. They're good. But he fights Barnyard. fucking mallets him over the head with that pipe. And then Patsy jumps in the fucking the Lincoln Town Car there or whatever the fuck that was. And drives under the jacks, thus pinning Barnyard, and then the car from the top crushing the both of them. So they were both done. That was nice. That was nice. Of which Patsy her only redeeming quality, which another little interesting. Okay, let's think about this. Remember what I just said? How it's weird that she's okay with all of this, and then when it gets to the Mrs. Norris scene, you're like, well, yeah, definitely. Like, she's the only one that at the end is just like she's on the roof, like as she's dying, and you're just like, because interesting choice that it was her.
I was wondering if you were going to bring that up.
It just kind of dawned on me. I'm like, oh shit.
I got because they're both irredeemable at the end of the day, except I want to say the girl from Cannibal Holocaust. Although she was more disgusted by everything that was going on and didn't necessarily want to be there. We had to have that conversation last year around this time, but I kind of got that vibe from her. But I think Patsy might actually. She waited up until that moment and was like, "Fuck, I shouldn't be doing this," and then did it. Very interesting that they did do that way. And also, if you're keeping score at home, Norris didn't kill them; they killed each other. So
yeah,
you had one self-defense, and I'm going to count Drugstore as a self-defense too, because he did have the knife and he was coming at him, and he could have backed out and retreated at any point.
The only exit was behind Drugstore.
That's what I mean. Drugstore could have backed out at any point.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. I thought you meant Norris. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm
still nowhere to go. Yeah.
So you had two self-defense, and then one he had nothing to do with because she committed manslaughter and suicide at the same time. Huh.
So they get to the roof. It's Norris and Stegman holding Mrs. Norris at knife point. Now, he cuts her, right? He cuts her on the chest or something, right?
Across the chest, yep.
Yeah, that's fucking brutal. Then they get into their little tussle and fight. The knife flies to the side. One could ask why Mrs. Norris didn't grab the knife, but everything that she'd been through in the last hour or so, it's understandable that she's just like, I have no idea what's going on right now. But I like that they fight, and then Mr. Norris ends up uppercutting Stegman MK style through the window, just like the pit. But he's kind of caught up in the ropes at first. And it's almost exactly like the fucking Good Son scene at the end with the cliff. No, mommy, please.
Didn't expect those two to meet like that, but
well, we mentioned Elijah Wood, might as well.
It all comes back around.
But he's like, no, please, Mr. Norris, help me, I'm sorry. And then I love that you see the struggle on his face, because he's like, there's every inkling in his body wants this kid to die, but he's still like, I gotta save these kids. And he goes to try to help him, but of course Stegman, being the little shit that he is, tries to get one last swipe in with the knife. But then I like the immediate realization, like, oh yeah, and he immediately takes his hand back and then just fucking belts him right in the face.
Haymaker right to the nose.
And then Stegman, of course, falls through. I guess while he's falling through, the ropes get wrapped around his neck, and he lynches himself and gets all cut up by glass. Right above the band that's performing, by the way. So it was a great finale. Like, I would have been standing throwing roses at that performance. And I'm like, because thankfully, unfortunately, my daughter decided to do band and chorus both this year. So I'm going to have to go to some really bad shit later this year. not for my daughter, but I mean, just I was in band myself. I know how these kids are gonna sound.
I was also a band kid.
Mm-hmm.
I will say this about Stegman falling, though, and I'm going to quote James Caan from the movie Thief. Big fucking loss to humanity right there.
I could have been another Jeff Bezos. Because it would have been great. He would have, because Amazon started as a book thing. You could see he's just like, I'm gonna fucking sell books to people because it's funny. The irony. um, but you get the little, he saves the day, or he saves his wife anyway. Hugs her and everything's good. And then, like you said, we get the nice little pre-credits text scroll wrap up where it does explain that Norris does not get charged for anything because nobody saw it happen.
He can't get charged with assault because the one person's word it's against is, hanging by a thread there.
Even though, because I'm trying to think if you were to actually take this to court now, the main thing that would be going against him is we've already got past situations where you two were going at each other's throats, and 2, everybody in that auditorium saw you run away. So it's like, we didn't see you do that shit, but we saw you leave in a fucking hurry, and we saw what happened to Stegman afterwards.
But now that they're all dead, the school does not have any problem throwing them under the bus. So all the witnesses that didn't come forward previously, they're going to come forward. Also, they have the Polaroid.
I wonder if... Oh, that's true. I wonder if... Now, I know that kid, the kid that stabbed Michael J. Fox, he was staying locked up because he did it. There's no way around that. But imagine that he got out, like that he didn't have to stay locked up. Imagine he got out thinking that Stegman and all of them are going to protect him. And then he gets back to school and everybody stares at him. And then he hears what happened. He's like, fuck.
Now the nerds are beating him up.
Why don't you snort this and go up the flagpole, asshole?
Oh, man. That's the sequel we need.
This is the prequel to Revenge of the Nerds.
It makes sense. It tracks.
All in all, I was sitting very comfortably on a 3.5, but having sat down and discussed all of the small minor things that they touch on and paint the picture with, you gotta give it a 4. So I will sit happily and comfortably on a 4 with this one.
I'll match you on that. I think it's got enough. I think it is in the subgenre of gangs, rape, revenge, and evil school shit.
Evil school shit.
I don't know. I got nothing for it.
No, you're not wrong.
I think it holds up. I mean, it's not like Hollywood didn't need to grab, and do a Dangerous Minds to this or anything, because it was right at that sweet spot of gang movies. And to put the gang in the school, to go to the levels that they went to, which I think is the most important part of it, that they were willing to do that taboo kind of stuff. I dig it. I think the aesthetic is good. The gang members do look like what they call street gang punks in movies. They don't have the actual gang look to them, but they do have that stereotypical aesthetic to them, and it's perfect. It works out.
Last thing that I will say about this movie, and it's a question I'll pose. Class of '84 Stegman's gang versus Return of the Living Dead gang. Who wins?
Return of the Living Dead gang. It ain't.
Trash versus Patsy alone.
Trash would rip her to pieces. Suicide
Versus Stegman.
versus Stegman. Suicide has one of the most interesting things in his Go walk together. You're
Oh,
fine.
you good, D? You good?
His characterization when he says, "You think this is a joke? This is a way of
Way
life,"
of life.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
Never really paid attention to what he's wearing. He's got a Marine Corps Scout sniper shirt on, so he's a war vet, more than likely. Yeah, he's gonna fucking wipe the floor with those guys. Him alone could probably take down Barnyard.
Well, I'm wondering. Okay, so we got Trash versus Patsy. We got Stegman versus fuck. You just said his name and it just went out of my head. Suicide. Is fucking enchilada dude fight? Does he fight Barnyard or does he fight the chain dude? I think he would fight the chain dude.
I think he'd fight the chain dude. Yeah.
Who fights Barnyard?
No. Suicide fights Barnyard. He doesn't.
Okay,
the
weight
leader
class
doesn't have to
wise.
fight. Yeah, the leader
Weight
doesn't have to
class-
fight the leader.
Yep. Yeah, and you know what? Based on our astute analysis of Stegman's facial reactions during certain things, he probably couldn't. The only fight he can really win is the one when he beats the shit out of himself.
He never wins a fight in the movie that is not assisted. That is a good point. Wow, that 4-star rating's really sticking now.
Yeah.
Stegman would have to fight the dude wearing the mock suit in Return of the Living Dead. That's also in Point Break. That's who he would have to fight.
Barnyard fights Tarman.
Oh, Barnyard's fucked. Barnyard loses that battle 13 times out of 1.
Anyway, I think that's all I got. Class of '84 is fucking awesome.